here actually as per the recommendations of the, you take any recommendations, the American Diabetes Association recommendations, or the American College of Endocrinology, or the AA's, that is American Association of the Clinical Endocrinologists, or the European Association for the Study of Diabetes, or anything says, all the international and the national guidelines, what they say is, if at all you have to select the insulin from the basket of insulins, it is the basal insulin that is has to be tried first, because basal insulin is going to control the fasting plasma glucose first. So you have to always remember, fix the fasting first, then only you will be able to catch up the postprandial glucose. So as per the recommendations, as per the evidence based medicine, so here in this particular scenario, after the 3 drugs, the 4th drug should be inevitably a basal insulin must be the choice of the management here. And what are all the factors that should be considered before we choose one actually? So next slide please. So the factors to be considered before prescribing a basal insulin, it should be very efficacious, yes, and the less incidence of hypoglycemia, and very less incidence of the glycemic variability, and it should be very simple to start, that is you start with a basal insulin, and you should keep escalating until one reaches the target fasting plasma glucose. So it should be like efficacious, and incidence of hypoglycemia must be low, and the glycemic variability also must be low, that is the lows and the highs swings must be very low, and it should be very simple to use. Next slide please. So this is the significant A1C reductions across the all clinical trials, starting from Conclude, Devote, Begin Asia, Begin BB2, T2, the Begin Early and Begin One Long. The A1C reduction you find the maximum is like you can see with somewhere around 1.5. So these are all the A1C reductions seen with degludec in different studies. The A1C reduction is very considerable with our basal insulin degludec. Next slide please. And consistently proven hypoglycemia benefit across the Begin and Switch and Devote trials in more than 16,000 patients. This is a comparison between the IDEC, the insulin degludec versus insulin glargine U100, and you find the evidence from the phase 3A Begin and phase 3B Switch 2 and the cardiovascular outcome Devote, and the real world evidence the EU Treat T2. The overall the incidence of the hypoglycemia you find, and you can see the figures, either the nocturnal or the severe hypoglycemia according to this particular these things. Yeah, next slide please. So consistently proven hypoglycemic benefit that is seen with the Conclude trial when compared with insulin degludec with glargine U300 also. That also shows, okay, from these figures you can make it out that glargine U300 is little bit better when compared to the glargine U100, and the best is insulin degludec. Yeah, the rate of hypoglycemia you can see from the figures, and the overall symptomatic hypoglycemia, whereas the nocturnal symptomatic hypoglycemia and the severe hypoglycemia is less when compared to this the glargine U100 when it is compared with glargine U300. Next slide please. And you find this graphs showing the association between the A1C and the hypoglycemia, and the blue one is the insulin degludec, and then the grey one is the insulin glargine on the left hand side in T1DM. On the right hand side you find the T2DM, and the same shows that the T1DM you find a marked difference between the A1C and the hypoglycemia with regards to degludec. Degludec scores over the glargine U100 in type 1 DM patients, whereas the difference is not so significant when it is concerned with type 2 diabetes patients. So either you can start with this particular the glargine U100 or even the glargine the insulin degludec also. So next slide please. So the lower day-to-day variability with regulatic versus the other basal analogs. So you find a drastic difference by this at least the day-to-day variability when compared with this insulin U100 versus degludec is almost the incidence is reduced by the glycemic variability is reduced by 4 times actually. So that is, and this particular day-to-day variability with glargine U300 versus degludec, at least it is the reduction is by 50% actually. Next slide please. So you can see this particular the significant lower glycemic variability with this degludec in this the bar diagram. You can clearly make out that the patients with high glycemic variability, the degludec significantly reduces the coefficient of variation and the standard deviation. This is the data from the real world evidence. Next slide please. So lower glycemic variability with degludec versus glargine U100. This is called hypodec trial, which is which is been done in. This is a randomized control trial done in T1DM patients. 2-year randomized crossover study comparing degludec and glargine U100, and you can find the coefficient of the variation in percentage. The 24 hours and the diurnal and the that is daytime and the nocturnal, and the treatment with insulin degludec resulted in significantly the lower all day and the coefficient variation primarily driven by nocturnal CV. Next slide please. See, the take home message from this particular slide is the lower the glycemic variability, the better the time in range. That is the lower the time below the range or time above the range. That's what it shows. Next slide please. The lower glycemic variability, that is the improved coefficient of variation and the mean amplitude of the glycemic excursions and the mean of the daily differences and the time in range. This is the real world evidence. What we see, the time in range is increased by 13% with this particular insulin degludec, and you find the improvement in mean interstitial glucose and the coefficient of variation and the mean amplitude of the glycemic excursions and the mean of the daily differences. Next slide please. So the comparable time in range with degludec versus glargine 300, it is also like you find the dotted one is glargine U300, whereas the line is the solid black line is the insulin degludec. You find a nice the time in range with insulin degludec when compared with this insulin glargine U300. So when you compare this degludec with either glargine U100 or glargine U300, it is proving much more better and much more efficacious in all the parameters. That's what I have mentioned in my last slides. Next slide please. Yeah, simple initiation and titration of degludec in type 2 diabetes patients. Start in insulin naive patients, and the second, the right hand side, it shows switch from other basal insulins. So when you come to this, the left hand side, either you can administer it alone or in combination with OADs or GLP-1 analogs or the bolus insulin. The recommended daily starting doses, generally we start with 10 units and we keep monitoring with SMBG and keep escalating once or twice in a week by 2 units or 4 units, and this requires the subsequent individual doses adjustments. That's what I said, that is called the initiation of insulin and intensification of insulin and optimization of insulin. These are the 3 parts of insulin initiation and the intensification and the optimization. And the right hand side you find switch from other basal insulin. Suppose you want to switch from insulin, this NPH, insulin, this particular the detimer or the insulin glargine, you want to switch over to degludec from OD or BAD basal insulin therapy or the basal component of the prior basal bolus regimen premix insulin, the unit to unit switch, that is 1 to 1, and 20% dose reduction to be considered when switching from a BAD insulin. So the titration is adjust the dose once weekly or twice weekly based on the convenience of the doctor, convenience of the clinician, convenience of the patient. The mean of two SMBG tests. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the flexible dosage timings with degludec, that is that varies drastically from 8 to 40 hours. This is 2 phase 3 clinical trials. The entire week from Monday to Sunday it is seen. Whenever you take, either in the morning or in the evening or in the again in the morning, again in the evening, again in the morning, again in the evening, again in the evening. So whenever you take that, you don't find the glycemic variability, you don't find the swings, you don't find the ups and downs, and this is the inference from this particular slide. Next slide, please. So what does this leave the clinician with? The hypoglycemia and glycemic variability are the big barriers to tight glycemic control, as you all know that. As you try to go for intensive control, especially in T1DM patients, the hypoglycemia and the glycemic variability are the biggest barriers for the tight glycemic control, where we cannot go for, because the severe hypoglycemia, the level 3 hypoglycemia proves somewhat dangerous. So we cannot go for intensive control sometimes. That is a big hurdle we are facing day to day OP clinically. And that leads to the newer generation of basal insulins like degludec address these issues and make an ideal basal start. That is the greatest advantage of this particular insulin degludec. That's what I said. It has got low incidence of hypoglycemia either in T1DM or in T2DM. It has got less glycemic variability, so that the up and downs are not seen, and it reduces the HbA1c and the fasting plasma glucose also to a reasonable control. Next slide, please. And coming to our case, Akanksha, the patient uncontrolled on multiple oral anti-diabetic drugs. So we added insulin degludec 10 units to the particular existing OADs. So the metformin 1000 milligram BID and the glimepiride 2 mg BID, and with this particular empagliflozin 25 milligram, they were continued. So whenever you start a basal insulin, the clinical funda is you are not supposed to take up the OADs and put the patient on basal insulin. You are not going to gain anything. You have to continue the existing OADs. Along with that, you have to start with 10 units. You can escalate it to 12 units, 14 units, 16 and all. You can make it 20. The maximum you can go for is the 40 units of any basal insulin, given basal insulin. If it is not able to reach the target A1C or the target fasting plasma glucose, the beyond 40 units, it is not advisable to continue that. You have to change over to some better insulins like insulin degludec aspart, that will score in a much better way. So maximum you can give is 40 units of insulin degludec. So, and we advised the follow up after a month. Next slide, please. So coming to the summary, the significant reductions in the A1C compared to the baseline, and show significant reductions in the rates of overall confirmed symptomatic and nocturnal confirmed symptomatic and severe hypoglycemia in type 1 diabetes and type 2 diabetes versus glargine U100, and significantly higher time spent in time in range with the degludec versus glargine U100, and significant lower time spent in nocturnal the time below range with degludec versus glargine U100, has a simple titration schedule that has the potential for up to 5-year SMBG test pricks per week versus Glargine U100 where it needs number of SMBG test strips and allows the flexibility in the timing of insulin administration when needed without compromising the risk of hypoglycemia. So, and yeah, I conclude by saying thanks for your patient listening. Though there was a technical glitch in the beginning, and madam had given a wonderful talk today, so I'm thoroughly happy with the ma'am's talk. So let's get back to our question and answer session. Saket, are there any questions, please?
Sir, there's a list, and really we always say when Shivri sir is informed, definitely he cover the times, and now we have enough time for us for discussion.
That's what.
I request all the delegates, please open with the questions we have received.
Saket, you do one thing. Saket.
Yeah.
Please make Dr. Rangarajan as panelist so that he can directly talk to me, so that he generates a lot of questions in the interest of the audience, so that I can answer all the questions, please. If you have that option, you can do that.
You have changed Dr. Ambaram Rangarajan?
Yeah, Ambaram Rangarajan, yes.
Fine.
Or Dr. Garima, you can make them the panelists and they can ask the question so that I can directly answer the question, so that they in the interest of all the participants, I think. If already there are questions, you can just go ahead with the questions.
I request Ambaram Rangarajan, sir, I am unmuting yourself. You can directly ask the question.
Yeah.
Sir, you have muted yourself. Kindly unmute. Dr. Rangarajan,
Yeah, please, Dr. Rangarajan, please kindly unmute yourself and you can pose the questions, please.
Dr. Rangarajan, kindly unmute yourself. So in meanwhile, I start asking the question.
Yeah, please, Saket, carry on, please.
So the first question fired by Dr. Ambaram Rangarajan.
Yeah.
The role of the intermittent fasting in diabetes, and how will you advise?
The role of intermittent fasting in diabetes.
Yes, sir.
And next add-on question, the role of intermittent.
How will you advise?
Acha, okay. So it's a wonderful question actually. Nowadays the concept of intermittent fasting is picking up like anything. See, for normal population, I generally advise 10 to 12 hours fasting. Intermittent fasting is okay. That's not a problem at all. One can even go for 12 hours or even the 14 hours also. As far as diabetes is concerned, especially when it comes to type 1 diabetes, it is absolutely contraindicated. The intermittent fasting concept is absolutely contraindicated in type 1 diabetes patients, as well as the patient suffering from this gestational diabetes mellitus also. It's absolutely contraindicated, keeping the maternal and the fetal complications. It is advised in some set of patients actually suffering from type 2 diabetes, that too particularly the young diabetic patients who don't get into hypoglycemias, and the patient is on either one or two the oral anti-diabetic drugs, like which will not let the patient to hypoglycemia. That is per se, to start with, the patient is on metformin. You can advise an intermittent fasting for at least 10 to 12 hours, and the patient is on along with this metformin, the patient is on DPP4 inhibitor. You can allow the patient to fast for at least 10 to 12 hours. Overnight fasting can be done. And if the patient is on the SGLT2 inhibitor along with this, I don't advise, because the intermittent fasting, if the patient takes lot of fluids in between, fasting means they don't take anything. So anything solid and anything liquid is totally different. So if the patient is able to take the fluids when the patient is on SGLT2 inhibitor, so that the patient will not get dehydrated or will not get into the euglycemic decay, you can encourage this intermittent fasting. But for that, no patient on any other sulfonylurea or this particular insulin or the GLP-1 receptor agonists are not the eligible candidates for intermittent fasting.
Sir, Dr. Rangarajan is also in line now.
Yeah, please.
Sir, you can.
Dr. Rangarajan. Dr.
Good
Rangarajan.
evening, sir. Good evening.
Yeah, very good evening, sir. So I think I have answered your first question regarding intermittent fasting.
Yes, because there are a lot of now forums are just advising intermittent fasting. The fasting is up at 2 to 3 times. One is fasting for 16 hours, fasting for 20 hours. And
No. That is absolutely rubbish, sir. You cannot advise any of the patients suffering from diabetes to go for 18 hours or 20 hours fasting is not. It's not at all like what we generally say is you try to take small frequent meal, like you divide the major meal into 6 meal and take that is the fundamental the funda what we advise in the counseling with regards to the diet. So that's what the conditions I said. The patient is a young patient who is not letting himself into hypoglycemias on either metformin or metformin plus DP4 inhibitors. So they can be allowed for an intermittent fasting of 10 to 12 hours or max 14 hours if they can. But in between they have to take the fluids not to get dehydrated, sir.
I totally agree with you, sir.
Actually, to tell you,
I am talking about the non-diabetic people. But in diabetic people, they can take their dinner somewhere about 7 o'clock and a small cup of milk in the night before going to bed.
Yeah.
And they can take the breakfast somewhere about 10 o'clock. So it comes somewhere about nearly about 12 hours to 13 hours fasting.
But
so that would be a good thing.
Yeah, that's okay, but okay.
They are not a very severe oral hypoglycemia, sir. As you rightly said, metformin plus a DPP4 inhibitor,
Yeah.
which is not going to produce hypoglycemia.
Yeah.
That will be very fine, sir.
Yeah, the one thing, sir, which is not evidence-based medicine is to take the breakfast at 10 o'clock is a wrong thing. Earliest is the best one as far as the evidence-based medicine. If you take the breakfast before 8 o'clock, it is well and good. And anything that is after 8 o'clock is called brunch, not a breakfast. It is neither breakfast nor lunch, it is brunch actually. So brunch doesn't make any sense actually. Even the patient is on metformin and is not getting into hypoglycemias, you have to advise. What you said is the best thing. They can as well go for an early meal, like 7 o'clock they can have their dinner, they can finish it off, and they don't need to, even the milk is not required for them, because these patients will not be let down with the hypoglycemia. And the morning, as soon as they get up, and they can have some, because the pancreas is the lazy organ in the body, which will not it will not be active any point of time. It will not be active unless it gets a stimulus from this. The biggest stimulus is you put something in the stomach, that becomes the biggest stimulus for the pancreas to start with. So early morning you have to put something like at least two biscuits with 1 cup of coffee or something else as early as possible. That makes the pancreas very active. It starts secreting, otherwise it becomes the laziest organ. Already it's a lazy organ. On top of it you are not putting anything. It will be sleeping, it will not secrete even a single unit of insulin, which becomes a little bit detrimental for the patient, sir.
Sir, I totally agree with you, sir. What I suggest is,
Yeah.
what I was trying to mention is, early morning when they get up, they take a handful of sprouts.
Yeah, wonderful. That's what I am telling. You give anything. Yeah, sprouts is the best food. You can give the patient the baked beans. Baked beans are the best food. You get all the proteins. You get the sprouts. Wonderful. That's what.
Because the reason why I said this, lot of our ladies, it's very difficult to take breakfast early in the morning.
Yeah, that's our tradition, sir. Actually.
The house has go for work.
Yeah.
So I don't ask them to take very late breakfast.
Yeah.
But,
I totally agree with the Indian scenario.
1 hour afterwards.
Yeah. Whereas the Western scenario,
Right, sir. Correct, sir.
whereas the rest of the world, they take very early breakfast at 6 o'clock, sir. 6 o'clock and a heavy breakfast. So according to the International Diabetes Federation, what it says is the slogan given by the theme given by International Diabetes Federation is an early good breakfast that makes the day wonderful. That is the slogan given by our International Diabetes Federation. So we have to follow in accordance with this slogan. So you can as well give the sprouts, or else you can give the baked beans or something else. You can take eggs also early in the morning. You can take fruits also in the morning. That's the time when one has to take the fruits. But since we are not used to this particular type of foods in the morning, we tend to have this the idli, dosa, pongal, vada, all these there's common breakfast, which is almost very high in carbohydrates actually. Whereas the Westerners, they take the red bread along with either the beef or the pork or the chicken, and they take lot of eggs actually, and they take baked beans. The routine part of the breakfast will be the baked beans and the boiled eggs or the scrambled eggs, whatever be the. It should be like the protein content should be more and with a less content of carbohydrate. That's what I advise. The evidence-based medicine also says that. So our Indian diet, Indian breakfast is all the meal, 3 major meal, they are loaded with a lot of carbohydrates. Anything you eat is carbohydrate. Only thing is it makes a difference whether it is simple carbohydrate or a complex carbohydrate. That's it. So you have to shift the paradigm shift in this thing. The proportions of the carbohydrate, protein, and all the fat is what I suggest is the research translates into the common man's language is the 40% should be carbohydrates, preferably complex carbohydrates, and 30% should be proteins, and 30% must be fats, and out of that 30%, majority should be either the polyunsaturated fatty acids or the monounsaturated fatty acids. Only 10% should be the saturated fatty acids, and you avoid trans fatty acids. That's what, sir. So we'll move on to the next question, sir, in the interest of time. Saket, next question.
With the permission of you, Dr. Pankaj Patwari,
Huh?
I request to card and with you, sir.
Pankaj?
Pankaj Patwari.
Pankaj Patwari, yeah, tell me. Tell
Sir,
me.
You have muted yourself. I'll be unmute.
Yeah, Pankaj, you have to unmute yourself first, please.
Hello, sir. Is that audible?
Yeah, it's audible, sir.
Yeah, you are audible, but a lot of echo is coming, okay? Yeah. Tell me, Pankaj.
Sir, about steroid and insulin, glargine or degludec, and how to monitor, how to change the dose of steroid based of glargine based on fasting sugar, or pre-dinner it's like giving glargine in the morning, degludec in the morning.
No, I didn't get you, first of all, Patwari. You are saying steroids, eh?
So steroid use and degludec. See, if I want
Steroid
to
use.
in the morning,
Steroid use, okay. Part one is
Yes,
the
sir.
patient is on steroid.
yeah.
Yeah, part one is the patient who is suffering from diabetes is on steroid for some reason. Okay, fine.
Yes, sir.
And then,
Most common now, sir, is COVID. So everybody is on steroid. Many of the diabetic patients are on steroid. So how to suppose in the morning we are giving steroid and we are giving insulin, degludec or glargine. How to change the dose based on the fasting sugar during the pre-dinner.
no, first of all, I'll tell you, the basic fundamental is whenever the patient is on steroid, he should not be on a basal insulin. That is the take-home message number one. Any reason, especially the COVID pandemic, most of the times steroids are being abused. rather than being the judicious usage, it is being overused and abused. Everybody is writing steroid to all the COVID patients. So that is been abused, and that is one of the reasons for this mucormycosis. Per se, COVID is not the reason for this mucormycosis, the opportunistic infection. So per se, when the patient is on steroid for any reason, you have to be, either the patient must be switched over to the patient affordability is low, you can go for the biphasic premixed human insulins, or the insulin analogs, the biphasic premixed analogs like insulin degludec and aspart, or you have to go for a basal bolus insulin if it is an inpatient setting when the patient is on steroids actually. And the latest guidelines as far as the COVID is concerned, the latest guidelines issued by all the national or the international bodies, what they say is the home quarantine patients should not be put on steroids actually. Everybody is writing steroids on day one. It is not the time. It's only after the 5th day you have to decide whether the patient should be on steroid or should be maintained normally. And only in cases where there is admission, the diabetic patient gets admitted, then only even the non-diabetic patient who got contracted with this COVID-19 virus should not be put on steroid at once. The time of diagnosis, and without seeing anything, just you cannot go for that. If the patient is asymptomatic, no treatment is required. If the patient is symptomatic, based on that, even the HRCT scan is over abused actually. It is very much like it causes radiation. That's a debatable issue once again. And you find the changes in the HRCT when in the given the COVID pandemic setting only after the 5th to 8th day, not on the day one. Day one the patient goes to the radiologist and says I want a scan. On the day one the clinician orders a HRCT scan. He finds nothing. He says Corads 1 and the severity score is nothing. 0/25. So it doesn't make any sense. The real changes, if at all the lungs are involved in COVID pandemic, if the pulmonary manifestations are there, you suspect that either in the form of cough or some breathlessness, or you need to monitor the SpO2. If it is going down, you order for an HRCT. After 5 to 8 days, you find the changes. Accordingly, you can make a note of it whether the lungs are involved or not. And based on that, Pardon, Patwari.
So that will very well taken off. Suppose on day 8, patient who is already on basal bolus and needs steroid, then
that is well and good. If the patient is already
basal bolus, and if you want to give steroid on day 8,
yeah, you can happily, by incrementing the dose, you can happily continue the basal bolus. Basal bolus is the ultimate. Basal bolus is the ultimate. That is
that means the basal. I mean the basal dose we have to shift to morning. How will I?
Why do you see? You usually
pre-dinner value.
Yeah, Patwari. Usually we go give this basal insulin at 10 o'clock in the night. That is our tradition to give it. If at all you want to give it in the 10 o'clock morning also, that is good. Based on the fasting plasma glucose only, you have to change that, and you have to take the 7-point formula of monitoring. That is the fasting and the 2 hours post breakfast, and pre-lunch and the post lunch, 2 hour post lunch, and the pre-dinner and the post dinner, and the 7th parameter being the early morning 3 a.m. That is to rule out either the dance or the Somagi phenomena. But for that, if you go for the 7-point formula of monitoring, you can as well titrate either the bolus or the basal dose. That can be given, okay. As you said, you want to give it in the morning, that's okay. But that doesn't make any change in the scenario actually, because it's a true 24-hour acting which has got the variation. The schedule I have told you, 8 hours to 40 hours. Today you give it in the morning, tomorrow you give it in the evening. That makes no difference, because degludec is a very ultra long acting basal insulin which makes no difference. So Monday, yeah, that's what I've shown in one of my slides. Monday to Sunday, yeah, whatever be the time you give in the morning and you give in the evening, again you give in the morning, again you give in the evening, nothing will change. But only thing is, when the patient is on steroids, you have to constantly monitor the blood sugars, so that the meticulous, when the patient is on steroids, you have to meticulously control the blood sugar, because on the latest the input I have to tell you, the per se the COVID, we all know that it results in hyperglycemia, and the latest update is not only the hyperglycemia, it induces the new onset type 2 diabetes. This is the latest one. The yesterday's update is it is going to induce the new onset diabetes, and the prognosis is very worst in COVID pandemic. If the patient is non-diabetic and he becomes like T2DM by means of the COVID hyperglycemia, the worst outcomes are seen in that particular set of patients who have become COVID-induced diabetes rather than the existing diabetes. That is the difference. So you have got worst outcomes, and the mortality rate goes very high, Pankaj, actually. So you have to be very vigilant about the blood sugars and the blood pressures. You have to monitor all the parameters, and especially the high risk patients like age, hypertension, and the cardiovascular disease, and the diabetes, and the kidney diseases, and then the chronic liver diseases. When the patient has got multiple comorbidities, and as age increases, the complications they increase, and they just succumb to death. And of late, we need to think about this post-vaccination deaths, actually, Pankaj. See, Dr. K.K. Agarwal, with the late Dr. K.K. Agarwal, it's a shocking news that not only K.K. Agarwal, many doctors, hundreds of doctors who have been vaccinated, they have taken the 2 doses in the month of February or March or April, have succumbed to death because of COVID. So we have only the explanation to give that it depends on this particular, the efficacy of that particular vaccine being only 70%, that it is not working efficaciously in the remaining 30%, and that is not giving the proper reaction, that is not producing the enough quantity of antibodies against this. So when they get contracted with this coronavirus, they are succumbing to death, actually. So that's very pathetic. And that depends on multiple, that's what I narrated. It depends on multiple comorbidities, like age is one, actually. Age and the associated comorbidities, either the diabetes or the hypertension or the pulmonary diseases, or the smokers, or the cardiovascular diseases, or the chronic renal failure, or the chronic liver disease. These are all the factors which are going to determine whether the patient is going to recover or not. So with the proper treatment. And one thing I would like to clear using this particular platform. See, Remdesivir is just like a placebo. Remdesivir has no role at all. It is according to the evidence-based medicine. I am telling you, the WHO has funded for this solidarity trial, actually. The solidarity trial is done in 30 countries, in the 5 most the largest and the most reputed hospitals all over these 30 countries, with including the 12,000 patients, actually. They wanted to evaluate the efficacy of 4 drugs, actually. The solidarity trial includes, the one arm was put on this hydroxychloroquine, and the second arm was put on this remdesivir, and the third arm was put on the combination of lopinavir and ritonavir, and the fourth arm was on the interferons. And the primary endpoints they had looked into is, the first primary endpoint is whether the disease process is shortened, that is the 10 to 14 days either shortened to 5 to 7 days, or that was the first, either the disease progression is there or not, that was the first primary endpoint. And second point is mortality rate. So none of these drugs, starting from this hydroxychloroquine to remdesivir, lopinavir and ritonavir combination interferon, did not meet the endpoints at all. So WHO straight away said, please do not use hydroxychloroquine don't use remdesivir, don't use lopinavir and ritonavir, and don't use the interferons. So still people are mad running about this particular, they are madly running after this particular remdesivir, and the hype, they only to make money the companies are producing. And I don't know why the Indian authorities are not saying this particular the evidence-based medicine, that remdesivir is not at all effective. I don't know what makes them to say this. So one thing I want to clear actually regarding this remdesivir. Remdesivir is just like placebo, that's it. Not even placebo. Anything, Pankaj?
Some other questions. So, what is your thought on that using the time in range as a better parameter than the HbA1c to analyze the true glycemic content?
Sir, see, time in range is always important. Now the latest concept is time in range. So as long as the patient is within the time in range, you find less of glycemic variability. The patient is below the time range or the above the time range, you find the glycemic excursions, the lows and the swings and all. To avoid that, always and you cannot replace this particular the time in range with the HbA1c. You cannot, HbA1c cannot be replaced. HbA1c is a very good tool that gives us the mean average plasma glucose for the last preceding 90 days. But only thing is, the difference between the HbA1c and the glycemic variability is the glycemic variability, we can point out the hypoglycemias. The disadvantage, the greatest disadvantage of the HbA1c is, the one is that it is not going to give you any clue about the hypoglycemia. Second is, it does not give you any clue about the glycemic variability. These are the two disadvantages of HbA1c. So HbA1c is a very good tool. Fasting is a very good tool. That is, I said, the glycemic triad is nothing but fasting plasma glucose, postprandial glucose, and HbA1c is called glycemic triad. And the glycemic pentad is a new term. Glycemic pentad is HbA1c, fasting plasma glucose, postprandial glucose, along with glycemic variability and the quality of life. These are added. It becomes the glycemic pentad. You have to go for not glycemic triad, you have to go for glycemic pentad. That's what. It's a wonderful question.
Thank you, sir. So next question is there from Dr. S.V. Chandrasekhar, sir. Sir, I have already unmuted you. Kindly unmute yourself. Meanwhile, I'm asking one more question, sir. Sir, WTEC is safe to be used in the special populations like the elderly patient, pediatric and renal and hepatic impairment.
Pardon, Saket?
Sir, WTEC is safe to be used in special populations like the elderly, pediatric, renal and hepatic.
Absolutely. You can use degludec in any of the scenarios, irrespective of the age, irrespective of the comorbidities, irrespective of the complications, either the microvascular or macrovascular complications, except in only one condition, that is the macular edema, wherein we need to take the suggestion from the ophthalmologist. Sometimes insulin in pregnancy also it increases the research has shown us very clearly that the retinopathy gets worsened by this initiation of insulin. So degludec is no exception to that. So we need to have a consent from the ophthalmologist first and from the gynecologist second. That's it. Okay. Only thing is there are both the things have to be confirmed by this the ophthalmologist only, keeping this the retinopathy, either it is proliferative diabetic retinopathy or the macular edema is one condition where this insulin should not be initiated. Otherwise, what all the conditions the doctor had mentioned, you can safely use either in the pediatric population or in the geriatric population. Anybody is you can use except the pregnancy. It is not indicated in the gestational diabetes mellitus. Degludec is not the drug of choice. It is as per this that belongs to the category C drug, not B. So the NPH is the first one to be used actually. NPH is good, and you can go for Levemir also. You can go for Glargine also. but not the degludec. That is either the gestational diabetes or the pre-gestational diabetes is one condition where you cannot use this. Yeah. Next question, please.
Thank you, sir. I request Dr. S.V. Chandrasekhar to kindly unmute himself. I already unmuted.
Yeah, Dr. Chandrasekhar, please.
Dr. S.V. Chandrasekhar, sir, kindly unmute and
Kindly
ask the question.
unmute and ask me, Dr. Chandrasekhar.
Sir, the question is written, good evening, sir. Combined Degludec and as part
Yeah.
is not irrational.
Absolutely. How is it irrational? It is that falls into the category of a new category of insulin initiation. Like earlier we had basal, we had biphasic premix, and we had basal bolus. And this is called a co-formulation. Actually, this is called basal plus. Basal plus insulin can be initiated with the largest meal of the day. This is highly rational, not irrational. Certainly not irrational, highly rational also. It can be used either the OD dosage with the largest meal. If it is uncontrolled with one single dose, you can make it BD. That's it. Very easy.
Thank you, sir, for really simplifying this, the co-formulation.
Yeah, it's a co-formulation. It's called basal plus concept actually. Should be taken with the largest meal. That has to be we should make a little inquiry with the patient. What would be the largest meal of the day for that particular patient? It varies. Maybe someone takes a heavy breakfast. Maybe someone takes the heavy lunch, and some people, the bankers and all, they take heavy dinner because they have working lunch. All these employees, they take only working lunch, small breakfast and a large dinner. Then it is advised at the dinner, just 5 minutes prior to the dinner.
Thank you, sir. So this is now we go to the
And
last
I always insist on two things. The patient is diabetic. SMBG is very important. Likewise, if the patient has got hypertension, so there is a term called blood pressure variability also. See, home blood pressure monitoring should be encouraged in all the patients. These two things must be like they cannot replace anything. The self monitoring of blood glucose along with the home blood pressure monitoring, they cannot be replaced with anything. One has to, every clinician should encourage the patient to have one glucometer properly and meticulously maintained, and one good BP machine like the Omron. To the best of my knowledge, Omron, OMRON, Omron is a very good company that manufactures the blood pressure machines.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, any question from Chandrasekhar? Something you said, Dr. Chandrasekhar wanted to ask me?
So this is the same question, sir.
Acha, say, then okay, fine. Any questions, please?
Combined Degludec and aspart is not irrational.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Chandrasekhar is absolutely correct. It is not irrational. Instead of that, you can say it is very rational.
Yes.
See, it is not irrational is negative. If you take it in the positive sense, it is absolutely rational. Let us be at the positive end, Dr. Chandrasekhar. Let us not have any sort of apprehensions with these particular co-formulations, the insulin degludec and aspart. Only thing is, I am not endorsing these particular products of Novo Nordisk because just because I am speaker of Novo Nordisk, don't think that I am endorsing all the products. It doesn't mean that you stop using the biphasic premix like human mixed and switch over to all the patients to the IDEC aspart, the insulin degludec aspart. It is not my sense. Wherever the patient has got some flexibility, wherever the patient requires and where the patient is affordable, you can go for the better insulin co-formulations available in the market. That is what I mean to say. But don't take me wrong that I want everybody to prescribe. It is not my product. I am not an employee of Novo Nordisk. I am a speaker, totally unbiased for all the MNCs in the country.
And I'm sure all the audience also agree with that. You know, one audience also feel the same. That's why.
Yeah, we are in the
Whatever
process of disseminating the knowledge. That's it. It doesn't mean that whenever you find a suitable patient, the patient like okay, software engineer might have the reimbursement facility. He asks, sir, can I have a better insulin with less hypoglycemias and less weight gain? So you can. If a banker comes to you with the reimbursement facility, a rich bugger comes to you, sir, can I have a better insulin rather than this bottle and the syringe? So then you can go for all these the insulin analog, the designer insulins, which offer the more advantage to the patients in the form of less hypoglycemias, and most of the time the patient will be within the time in range, and the weight gain is also very negligible actually, because I use this particular the insulin degludec and aspart very extensively in my practice. So far I have never seen a drastic improvement, unless otherwise the patient has lost, because of some various reasons, because of hyperglycemia the patient might have lost 10 to 15 kilos, and then we put the patient on this particular insulin degludec and aspart BD actually, then the patient's weight will increase. Otherwise, the normal weight will not increase if the patient is not in severe hyperglycemia. Any questions, please?
Thank you, sir. Now these are the end of the questions.
So,
So I request now
Rangarajan sir has no questions. Very surprised. Rangarajan sir is, I think he is busy. I think
who's the name, sir?
Rangarajan, Amburam Rangarajan sir.
Ranga sir asked the question.
Yeah. And Garima, is she there? Garima? Dr. Garima from Indore, Madhya Pradesh.
Yeah.
Rangarajan sir is from Tamil Nadu. So, if there are no questions, we can just wind up this session. You want to just make a final announcement whether they have some questions or not, because still we have 8 minutes more.
So I request you, sir, for just giving the final take-home message to all the audience of viewers.
Yeah. I conclude by saying stay safe, stay home, and stay healthy. Take care of yourself in the COVID pandemic, and try to protect yourself, because we are in the front line. We are seeing any number of deaths, like the COVID deaths. It's taking a huge death toll of the doctors, not only the doctors, the paramedics, and the different segments of the population. They are miserably dying in the second wave, and just please take care of. Even though you are vaccinated, please use mask. Please use this particular soap or sanitizer. Ask every of your patient, and you see to that they maintain some physical distance, and unless otherwise it is required, please do not step out. And the teleconsultation, wherever it is possible in the big cities, all doctors can prefer this teleconsultation to the physical consultation. You get that's going to serve the purpose. So that is my final message to all the doctors. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And with this, we always say